Most folks take a lot of things for granted. What I really wanted was what I had left behind, to move home and then come back and sell my area to the world. I couldn't have asked for anything more than that.
You're listening to Find the Good News, Episode 62, The Arrow of Life, featuring Shelley Johnson. Find the Good News is produced by Parker Brand Creative Services, a branding agency that thinks sideways, pushes forward, and gets your brand up. See what else we do at parkerbrandup.com. Thanks for tuning in to Find the Good News. I'm excited to share today's episode with you. I had the opportunity to speak with Shelley Johnson, who recently retired from her role as the Executive Director of the Southwest Louisiana Convention and Visitors Bureau. Shelley served Southwest Louisiana for over 30 years. She's meant a lot to me and countless others in our region, and I think once you get to know her through our visit, you'll see why. Next week, I'll be sharing my conversation with Darren Paul Hanks, the artist behind the 1221 Studios Art Drops. Darren and I have been friends for over a decade, so when listeners start requesting that I get him on Find the Good News, I had to make that happen. He's a good man with a real heart for helping others through creativity and listening, and I think you'll enjoy listening to him. We had 2 live episodes last week, and they were a lot of fun. One of the live episodes featured Daniel Schumacher, the editorial director of Louisiana Cookin' and the editor of Taste of the South, along with Chef Lyle Broussard of Jack Daniel's Bar and Grill of LaBerge. They visited the Parker Brand Creative Services studio to talk about the upcoming Southern Cast Iron Cook-Off that's taking place at the Lake Charles Civic Center on November 1st and 2nd. Head over to your favorite podcast app and check that episode out. It was a lot of fun, and if you're into cast iron cooking, you'll really dig the Live Wire Challenge. This week, we are kicking off a new line in the Find the Good News brand called Find the Good News Beacon. For the past year, we've focused 100% on broadcasting Southwest Louisiana stories to the world. With Find the Good News Beacon, we'll be visiting with individuals around the country and the world that are doing good works, and then bringing those stories right here to you. Our first interviews are happening now, and I'm excited to see the good news signal boosting. Okay, it's time to put on our travel caps, take the role of a tourist, take the roof off, and let the warm sun beam right into our hearts as Shelley Johnson takes us for a ride down memory lane. Now, press play on a little good news. There are people that change your life in profound ways, and yet many never really know that they had such an impact. For me, former executive director of the Southwest Louisiana Convention and Visitors Bureau, Shelley Johnson, is one of those people. This year, Shelley retired from her position after 30 years of service to our region, leaving behind a legacy of positive growth in travel and tourism that will be felt for decades to come. In my professional circles, her name carried weight. Working with her and her team meant something to those with whom I took meetings. In a professional capacity, my team and I have been honored to have been trusted by Shelley Johnson and her staff to create enticing and attractive adverts, each designed to bring visitors to our area. As much as I respected her professionally, when I asked Shelley to visit me on Find the Good News, my intentions were very personal. You see, for all these years of working with Shelley and her team, I've never had the opportunity to visit with Shelley one-on-one outside of the tour and travel environment. If you listen to this show often enough, you'll understand that I was more than a little curious to know her story. What I discovered in my visit with Shelley was a kindness, a passion, and a great love for this region that she calls home. In her 30 years of travels, from meetings with public figures across the entire spectrum and to places one might long to see, Shelley always felt the grass was greenest right here in Southwest Louisiana, and that kindness is embedded in our culture. What I discovered in my visit with Shelley is that she was tailor-made for this incredible job of extreme hospitality. The trajectory of her childhood on into her adult life pointed her squarely at the role, providing the skills, training, and expertise needed to build the Southwest Louisiana Convention and Visitors Bureau into the entity it is today. If you've been to any event in any of the sister cities that make up our region, then you've been impacted by the arrow of Shelley Johnson's life. She was kind, honest, thoughtful, and so giving in our conversation. With the tone of every word, I could tell that she truly enjoys sharing the wonders of our home. It's not hard to find echoes of Shelley Johnson's service in Southwest Louisiana.
I believe her lasting legacy will be the transference of her general perspective on our area. Her infectious conviction is that not only has Southwest Louisiana seen great days, but it has even more glorious days yet to see.
Wake up, it's morning. You're dreaming up a story. I can hear the way it's going, 'cause you're laughing in your sleep on the path to your deliverance, and a holy wall of light pouring through your window.
Old news, bad news, fake news. Sometimes you just want to shut it all down and get no news at all. With Find the Good News, I aim to change that by focusing on good people doing good work. I visit with artists, educators, civic and spiritual leaders, musicians, business owners, students, volunteers, and everyday citizens who are using their creativity, resources, and talents to bring hope and happiness to their corner of the world. In each episode, I dig into the hearts and minds of my extraordinary guests. We have street-level conversations about relatable things going on in their lives. Discover the critical life experiences that shape them, the perspectives that drive them, and the fundamental beliefs that are anchoring them to a path of goodness. There's a lot of news in the world. My name is Oran Parker, and I'm going to find the good.
And I love you just as well.
So, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be great. I've been wanting to have a conversation like this with you for a long time.
Well, me too.
I really
It's exciting. It's a new world for me.
Yeah, I mean, us too. You know, it's funny with the things that you think you're going to do with your career and life and what you end up doing. And some of that comes from just exposure to other things, right? I mean,
exactly.
You're around different things, and we, after many years, started realizing, you know, we do a lot of signals for a lot of people, but when you start to search your own heart and your own desires, you go, well, what would we do if it was just a signal that for us? What would that look like? You know, we'd never really done that before. And so that's how we kind of gave birth to this podcast, and it's really taken off. I mean, by some people's standards, maybe no, but I mean, I never have a shortage of guests. And never a shortage of good people that are actively doing things in the community.
There's a lot of good things happening in the community.
There really are, and good people.
It's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, every guest leads to another guest, and it's such a wide spectrum of people that are serving the community in just various ways. If there's a need, there's somebody in this area doing something about it. That's what I've, just seen in the last year. Honestly, just to tell you, so tomorrow is the actual anniversary of the show. We will be 1 year old tomorrow, and you're the first interview of what we're calling the new season.
Perfect.
I know.
I'm excited.
I know. I was so thrilled that it worked out that way. I was like, and I get to interview somebody I've been wanting to talk to.
Not just I'm watching the new season on television, but I am the new season.
You are the new season. That's actually true. I told Michelle that. I said, wow, it's so cool how things have lined up that way. But I have questions. I always write questions down for each guest, but the conversation sort of becomes its own thing. But I have so many questions, Shelley. I mean, so many things that I've just been curious about over the years.
Ask away.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to get started. So for people that are listening that don't know, you're the recently retired executive director of the Convention and Visitors Bureau.
31 years.
31 years. Wow. So that's really where my questions sort of began. As I was meditating on that, and over the last few days, I thought, okay, 31 years. I can look at just the last 5 years of my life and see like huge changes. And if you look at your life in those little chunks, you're like, wow, just in a few years, things can just really shift. You add that up for 31 years. Well, you're getting into a time zone where I'm a kid. Right? I mean, I'm 14, 13 years old. If you're going back 31 years ago, I'm trying to go back into my memory banks and go, okay, when I'm going to Lake Charles, do I remember what the Convention and Visitors Bureau looked like 31 years ago? And so my question really is, was there a Convention and Visitors Bureau 31 years ago?
It was a convention and tourist commission.
Okay.
Lake Charles, Calcasieu Parish Convention and Tourist Commission.
Now,
okay. In promoting things, that's a mouthful.
Yeah.
So
right.
A lot of times it was shortened to the Tourist Bureau. And yes, it was a A-frame building, just 2 doors down from where the current Convention and Visitors Bureau is.
Okay.
Located presently. It was on the other side of Wildlife and Fisheries. It was an A-frame.
Oh, it's not there anymore.
Not there anymore, thank goodness. It was termite ridden and had a trailer in the back because we had expanded our staff to that point.
Okay.
And it had a porta potty out front for the handicap.
Wow.
And it was not the most impressive thing that a visitor would see when they drove into our area to get information.
Okay.
A lot of times those visitors were also business people who were looking around.
Yeah.
So we had been working for quite a while to try to get a new location. We knew we wanted to stay on the lake. And in 99, Mayor at that time, Willie Mount, worked to allow us to be on the property we are on now. It was formerly the old DMV. You didn't even get your driver's license yet at that time.
Yeah, no, I wasn't driving.
No. But anybody that had been driving at that, earlier than that, that's where they went to get their driver's license.
I didn't know that.
Before they moved. And so it couldn't be used for private enterprise. It belonged to the state. And she was able to work out a joint services agreement. And we were able to build the building. And we've been there since 99. And that's hard to believe.
Yeah, I know. That is hard to believe.
And it's still state of the art, I believe. When people walk in, they're always so impressed with the facility and the view when you walk out on the back patio and everything that you can see in the brochures. And then we took it another step further in 2000, and I guess it was 15, and built Creole Nature Trail Adventure Point on this side of the river, on the Sulphur side.
Yeah.
And as the gateway and trailhead of the Creole Nature Trail All-American Road. And at the same time, it is also a visitor center.
Yeah.
And services this side of the river.
Well, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about for a little bit. Your average citizen, and I say this from firsthand knowledge, that people sometimes will, when I tell them that we work with the Convention and Visitors Bureau, they say, "What is the Convention and Visitors Bureau?" And I go, "Oh, that's right. Not everybody really fully grasps it. Your average citizen doesn't realize how many times they actually are engaging with something that the Convention and Visitors Bureau is supporting." Right? I mean, I go to festivals, events, all these things, Adventure Point. They don't maybe put it together that's one of the satellites.
Helped create a lot of events.
Yeah.
Way back in the day, we helped get the Christmas lighting festival started. The Gumbo Gator Tail Cook-Off, because we wanted to promote alligator meat and alligators here. Downtown at sundown. That's another one. I mean, then we turned them over to groups that were nonprofit and that were able to take them on from there. We didn't really want to be in the event business, but we do a lot to help seed and help events get stared.
Yeah, well, here in Sulphur, Boudin Wars is like that, correct?
Boudin Wars is like that as well.
Yeah. So, when I look around, when I go to events now, of course, I always look at the sponsor banners, and so I look at that a lot of times, and I'm like, wow, almost every single event that you see, the Convention Visitors Bureau is actively involved in some way. And then also the grants, right?
Right. We have the CVB was one of the first in the region to start an arts tourism partnership back in the time when Pam Breaux was the executive director of the Arts Council, and now she's on a national level.
Yeah.
And she and I worked together to create an arts tourism partnership grant. And that was the beginning of it. And then the Tourist Bureau took it from there and went on to some larger grants for major events that are room night generators. And from that came the Sports War Chest, with all of our sporting events, and it just goes on and on. The Bureau is very friendly to the community in terms of helping start events, they have to be, usually the grants are used for marketing and development. It's a very good program that has been created and has grown immensely since the time Pam and I started the little project.
That's wild to think. So how do you, this is going back. So how do you, what's your path to that door? All right. To that, granted 30 years later, what you've accomplished is just incredible. But that first path to that door at the Convention and Visitors Bureau or the commission, like how do you get there?
Well, we did change the name to Convention and Visitors Bureau in the legislature. I'm thinking that was around 94.
Okay.
But it's neat. I think you, as a Convention and Visitor Bureau, you are the marketing organization for the area you represent. In this case, the CVB represents the entire parish, 6 cities. And you look and what do we need? What do we need to have more visitors come to town? Food is a major experience for visitors here. In addition to our great Southwest Louisiana hospitality, really wonderful venues, the food here is one of the things, food and music are things that people want to enjoy while they're visiting. We are funded, or the CVB was funded and still is, by a 4% hotel tax. So our goal is always to bring visitors to town and have them spend the night.
Yeah.
Or if they're passing through, they're spending money, whether it's on gas or whether it's shopping. The visitor is the key word here. So what are the needs? And that's where things really began. And, if I look at the sports war chest, and a good friend of ours, Tab Fincham, who was on our board at the time, said, well, we ought to have a grant for sporting groups to have seed money to bring them here. And so out of that board decision, we've been able to bring some of the best sporting events to the area. And then look at our venues. Yeah. We had that venue, and then the need was to fill it. And
right.
So you've got SPAR, you've got Ward 3, you've got Burton Coliseum. It goes on and on.
Yeah, and it keeps expanding.
And it keeps expanding. And the sports marketing has been, I'm just so proud of the guys at the Bureau for all they're doing. They're making the paper daily with all sorts of things that they're bringing to town.
Yeah, things that we
PGA, boxing, USA Boxing. They're just going after it. So it didn't stop when I left.
Right, it's still going.
It's still going, definitely. And I'm so proud of them.
Oh, yeah. It's amazing. We see that stuff, too. We get to touch some of that.
Absolutely.
And it really kind of blows my mind whenever you see the amount of events and the variety that are taking place in this region. And it's almost kind of hard to wrap your mind around. When I tell people, you can't go do everything. And you still do hear people say there's just nothing to do. And it's just not true. When you see the amount of events that you could potentially link up with and get entangled
on a weekend.
Yeah, just
on one weekend, there's literally across the parish tons of things happening.
Yeah, and you can change. A few weeks ago, or maybe it was even a week ago, we went and we did a walk in the morning, and then we went to an art show in the afternoon. And then there was something else that evening, and you go, that's a lot to do in one day.
Yeah.
And you can do that every weekend now. Really.
And it's just grown and grown and grown.
Yeah.
And when I say back in 1988, did we have all of that?
No, we didn't. That's what I'm very curious about.
No, we did not.
What did it look like in 1988?
Very different. We didn't have casinos.
Yeah.
We had, the biggest hotel that we had at that time was the Hilton on the lake.
Hilton on the lake,
which is, now a beautiful piece of property.
Yeah.
And hopefully something wonderful will happen with that.
Yeah.
And then, you still had the old Chateau Charles.
Right. That's right here in Sulphur on 90, right?
Right here in Sulphur, famous for its food. And then you had a few museums. And that is when I think you could legitimately say, there wasn't a lot to do here.
Yeah.
And then the festivals took off. We primarily had Mardi Gras and the Contraband
Days, yeah.
And then look at all the things that have happened on both sides of the river with festivals.
Yeah.
Our Rabbit Festival,
Yeah.
For every letter of the alphabet, practically, we have a festival that'll match it.
And it seems like more and more eyes are turning to our area for that. I mean, you're seeing new stuff all the time. There's so many things that exist now that I think it's easy to take for granted that you were on the front end of. And one of those things you mentioned, it was the Creole Nature Trail. And I have to go back to my child's mind. I'm thinking around 1988, and when you're bringing that year into the picture, I'm going, how old was I in 1988? And I'm probably, 10 years old. So your awareness of what's going on in the world at 10 years old is pretty low. It's whatever your parents are watching on TV.
Or going to Holly Beach.
Holly Beach.
That was,
Well, and that's and right there. Okay, that's a good point. Now I understand. Oh, I'm on the Creole Nature Trail.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I didn't know. Was there a Creole Nature Trail? Was there a designation back then?
In 72,
Okay.
A group of individuals that basically were a tourism committee from the Chamber of Commerce, and the CVB was created a little while after that originally. So we took over the marketing of the Creole Nature Trail, but it was called, it was a scenic highway in Louisiana. It was designated by the legislature as a scenic highway that allowed it to have signs. Creole Nature Trail, much different than what we see today.
Sure.
And then in 94, a little bit before that, we heard about a program with Federal Highway Administration called the National Scenic Byway Program. And we jumped on that and applied to be a National Scenic Byway. Because we were already created as a scenic highway, it made it a little easier for us. We were one of the first 14 roads in the United States to become a National Scenic Byway. First, you had to be a state scenic byway, then a national scenic byway, and then 2002, the next and the final designation was All American Road, and that's basically a destination to itself. The main reason you're going down that road is to tour.
Okay.
And so we're very fortunate that we became one of the 41 roads in the United States that are designated an All American Road.
And I'm happy, I know it.
Sorry for interrupting the conversation, but I have something I need to tell you about. You may or may not know this, but this podcast is produced in the city of Sulphur, Louisiana, one of the sister cities that make up Southwest Louisiana. All of my childhood memories are wrapped up in the city of Sulphur. It's my home, and it's been a good home for most of my life. There is a growing diversity of unique businesses, services, and events in Sulphur, each with a rich and colorful story to tell about their particular place in this little jewel on the west side of the Calcasieu River. My mission is to promote good news, to put a positive signal out in the world. That's why my team at Parker Brand Creative Services has created the new brand, Sulphur Today. Here's how it works. Post your Sulphur event, service, photos, videos, or information using the hashtag #SulphurToday. That's it. My team and I will scan and curate those posts through the social media platforms we've put in place. Before you make your post, just type hashtag. That's a £sign for the folks that don't know what a hashtag is. And the words Sulphur Today with no space. My team at Parker Brand is monitoring this tag right now, and they're ready to create positive digital curb appeal for our city by sharing all the very best Sulphur has to offer through the Sulphur Today social media pages. As the Sulphur Today project grows, we will be scheduling interviews and video sessions with businesses, events, and services so they can tell their story of Sulphur Today in a series of ongoing micro-documentaries. Look for the eye-catching Sulphur Today sign when you're out and about. And be ready, we may be stopping by to visit you for a photo op. And don't forget to stop by the Parker Brand Creative Services studio in Sulphur to grab a Sulphur Today decal for your vehicle or business. We want people visiting our area to know that they can find all the wonderful things we have to offer with ease and be a part of our history by utilizing the Sulphur Today pages or by searching the Sulphur Today hashtag. Do you want to help us tell the story of Sulphur Today? Here's what I need you to do right now. Visit and like the Facebook page at facebook.com/Sulphur Today. And be sure to share positive sulfur information and post often using the hashtag Sulphur Today. Now, back to Find the Good News.
I love you just as well.
Now, what does that mean exactly for people that don't know? I mean, what does it mean to be an all-American road?
Well, there's only 41 in the United States.
Are they connected in any way to each other? Or there's like could someone potentially make their way around, I guess, to see all of these and like not have to jump ship somewhere?
No. Okay. But it's sort of like someone who enjoys lighthouses, and I want to see every lighthouse in the U.S. Okay. There are 41 of them. I mean, to give you an example, Route 66 is an all-American road. Okay. So Natchez Trace is an all-American road. The Highway 1 is an all-American road. And the Creole Nature Trail.
I like that, what you said there, and I'm actually glad we're talking about it. It reframes that for me, what that means. Yeah. That it's like if someone who likes lighthouses and says, I'm going to make, in my life, I'm going to see all these lighthouses. I could potentially see someone saying, I'm going to fly to this destination and then I'm going to rent a vehicle and I'm going to drive these roads. I'm going to do this as part of a hobby or a desire.
Off the beaten path.
Yeah.
People don't want to travel the interstate. The interstate looks the same. I-10, all along the way, the corridors, you've got, restaurants, you've got hotels, you've got shopping centers, you've got gas stations, but people want to utilize those services, but then they want to get off the beaten path and see the real Southwest Louisiana.
Right.
And we're very fortunate in the fact that we have 3 national wildlife preserves on the Creole Nature Trail. So even with development, there's those areas that will never be developed.
Yeah,
and
that's pretty good. That's incredible.
It's very important to how we became an all-American road.
Yeah, it makes me think about my own traveling habits, and I'm always curious, what in your experience in 31 years, what do you think has been the heftiest draw for the traveler? I mean, I know at first in the 80s there wasn't a lot, maybe other than outdoor sports. I mean, I know that was always been huge in Southwest Louisiana.
Creole Nature Trail has always been up at the top.
Really?
Even, as it was proceeding to its top designation, it was one of the major promotions that the CVB did, along with the historic Charpentier district. We had a historic district on the National Register. We had a state park, Sam Houston State Park. So, we were promoting all of those things.
Yeah.
And then in the mid-90s, we got casinos.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of things changed. We got some really important resort-type hotel properties with golf and restaurants and top-name entertainment. And so you had another part of that marketing mix that really became the top of the heap in terms of drawing visitors to the area. And then Creole Nature Trail. But people want to still, when they're here with maybe staying at the casino resorts, they might want to get out and go see some nature while they're here.
Yeah.
So it just depends.
Well, I think about that whenever I talk to travelers. A few months ago, I've told the story a couple of times on the show, but because it's related to this podcast, but I happened to be having coffee at Stellar Bean in Lake Charles, and Nicole and I were there between some meetings, and we were taking a little coffee break, and there was a couple that had just moved to town. I mean, like, they had just moved in, and they really didn't have their arms around Southwest Louisiana yet. And at that moment, when I was eavesdropping, I couldn't help but eavesdrop because they were talking to the person behind the counter, and it was a younger person behind the counter, didn't have a lot of information for them. And I just couldn't resist it because I felt like in all these years of working with the Convention Visitors Bureau, I had been blessed to have information for them. And so when they came by the table, I said, I couldn't help but overhear that you just moved here. And they were like, yeah, well, we're just trying to understand more about the area, and they told us where they'd moved, and we ended up having a 50 minute conversation, and I felt like I worked at the Convention and Visitors Bureau because I was going,
we trained you well.
Oh yeah, I was like, there's this and then that, if you go there, this is connected to that, and it was just this whole,
how proud we are, of all the different things that we have. I think that your knowledge of certainly working with us, but it's good to show that Southwest Louisiana hospitality, and
for sure,
to the visitor or to a new neighbor, what is there to do here?
Right.
It's great.
Yeah, I mean, it made me realize what I hear when I go out of town sometimes, and I'll, last time I went to Colorado, you go and you sort of gush over, you say, oh, I went up to Lily Lake and it was so beautiful. And then the person you're talking to goes, now where's that at? And I'm like, it's like 10 minutes from where we're standing. And they're like,
and I live here.
I live here. I'm like, I guess I've never been up there. And I'm going, and you're stunned by it, but they're just kind of ho-hum. And it made me realize how often I do that very thing here too. And so many of us probably do. We settle into it. It becomes norm. Like how many people that I talk to, and when I go, Adventure Point, if we can jump to that subject, especially here in Sulphur, it's people with kids especially. I love talking about Adventure Point, but when I tell them, they're like, yeah, I've seen that place. I'm like, yeah, the one with the big alligator. They're like, yeah. And I go, have you never stopped? And they go, well, I just guess I didn't realize. I mean, I know it has to do with tourism. I'm like, you need to go in there and bring your kid, and they're going to be blown away. And I think it's sometimes as locals, we just don't fully connect the dots to what's sitting right underneath our nose.
And I think the CVB is always trying to get that word out, not only on a domestic and international level, but a local level as well. I know that they have begun to do, over the last year or so, a full-page article in the American Press to show the different things that the Bureau's doing. It's a constant education process, but I think it's also good for people locally, to tell friends and family, and and to, when you've got guests that come in, bring them by the CVB and pick up brochures and see what we have to offer. So.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me think about that, going back to that coffee shop conversation, and then what you just said there, having a working knowledge of what's going on in your community, even from just an entertainment level, or things to do. If you want to call it what's to do. You become an ambassador for your area, We talk about that quite a bit here about curb appeal. It's so important to have curb appeal, and we don't all have it. We don't all take that approach. But if you have curb appeal on your lips too, not just literal curb appeal, but like, well, how are you speaking about your home, when you're talking to people, the value of that. I think that's super important. I think the CVB is a resource for that in a way. National Tourism Week is always what I always enjoyed.
Yeah. And that's another way every year that they really try to, put the word out to the local community about the importance of tourism and its economic impact. And, it is an economic indicator here. It's big business. And I'm so excited that Sewell is opening a hospitality travel and tourism program in a new building. For, that was something that was not available back in the day when I went to school. And when you're trying to figure out what you want to do in life, and I think tourism was sort of in my blood in a way, because I worked at a small motel when I was going to McNeese. I worked weekends. And
really?
So it was, if there would have been that opportunity for me then, I think that would have been a natural move for me.
Yeah.
And instead, after McNeese, I had the itch to go live in the big city and move to California.
Did you? Okay. Now we're getting into what I really want to talk about. This is, what's Shelley Johnson's journey?
Oh, well, it was a long one, but I spent about 5 years in San Francisco with the same property. I worked for a historic hotel.
Okay.
And a lot of people in destination marketing have a start in the hotel industry.
I didn't realize that.
So, going back to your selling hotel rooms, so in either way, if you're working in a hotel, you're selling hotel rooms. If you're working for a CVB, you're not only marketing the area so that you can promote the hotel industry. That's kind of where I got my start.
Isn't that interesting? I didn't realize that.
When you said curb appeal, it's a beautiful place to live, but I missed home. And I missed Mama.
Yeah.
And, and I missed the food. There's
Can't
nothing
compare
like
it.
it.
That's
There's
right.
nothing like it. And so about 5 years later, I moved back and came back here to the lake area and went to work for the Chateau Charles. And
really?
Then in '88 went on to the CVB. So
wow, so that's very interesting. So I didn't realize that's how you got the hospitality.
Yeah, and it's ingrained. No matter what I do in life, it'll always have something to do with the hospitality industry.
Yeah, and is that something that's always been around in your life, even when you were young, like a little girl?
Yeah,
was that something?
It was. It was. My mother managed a motel on Highway 90.
Really?
when I was growing up, and so that was for a little while. So it kind of we used to play on the switchboard, with the
That is so fascinating.
a lot of fun.
Have you told a lot? There's a
No,
lot
I haven't. You're pulling some stuff out today.
Man, that's so fascinating, Shelley. I love that. I mean, we talk a lot about that kind of thing on this show because it is interesting when we start to talk about things like that, how our trajectory, we get on a path and we don't even know we're on it.
Yeah, we don't even know we're on it.
And this little momentum starts building, and it's like, we're going our own way, but at the same time, there's this momentum of almost destiny that's sort of building behind you. And when you tell me those things, I go, that is your arrow.
Yeah.
The string.
Did I know it then? No, but
look at that.
Yeah.
So I mean, I wonder what else along the way, like that's in your path that goes, oh yeah, this was definitely like the bumpers in the pinball machine keeping me in this sort of this stream.
there were a few things, probably. Certainly the hotel I worked for in California, their market was tour groups. And so they would have 8 to 10 motor coach tours a day.
Wow.
And so I was able to learn that market. Then I moved home, and we didn't have any tour. I was like looking out the window. Where are the buses? There's no buses here. Right. I thought the buses were everywhere.
That's so funny.
And it was corporate. It was corporate and convention. So, and that was another market to learn.
Yeah.
So, there was that path of learning this and learning that, and not having the opportunity anywhere else to learn, but learn on your feet and learn.
All of that plays right into everything that the organization's doing today. That's so fascinating. I don't have a lot of experience in that. I did for a very, very short time when I lived in Colorado. I worked at a historic hotel, and I enjoyed it. I talk about it all the time. The main thing I enjoyed was the variety of people I got to meet. The job itself was not glamorous, but it was, I go to the train station and I pick people up in the van, and, on the drive from the van, they would say things like, and I wasn't from there, mind you, but,
Right.
when you live in a place and then work in that industry, you start to pick the knowledge up. And so they would go, so what is there to do? And I remember feeling kind of, maybe it was just a little ego thing. I don't know, but it was like, hey, I'm their guy. And it was something fulfilling about that. Like at this moment in time, this little half dozen people I've just picked up off the train, I'm their guy. They're looking to me to know where things are at. And, granted, they'll forget about me when they get in their room and move on. But it was every day there was a new little crop of folks. There was something rewarding about engaging with strangers in that way.
Absolutely. Of all nationalities, and,
Yeah.
that's what was so amazing. And still is. The Bureau is constantly bringing in domestic and international travel writers, tour operators, meeting planners to look at the area firsthand. They call them familiarization tours.
Okay.
And so we're the guide. We're the ones that are taking them around and showing them what they can do if they bring a group here. So in just another way, it's that same thing, but on the level of trying to get them to book business here.
Yeah, so I guess that's another thing that maybe the average layperson may not realize is going on. It's sort of like grooming to some degree. I think we tend to think of chambers that way, and in a way, what you're describing, it does kind of fit into that sort of role. Think
about a site, like a chamber might have a major developer come in for a site inspection, and we work very closely with the chamber. But it is very different, and a lot of folks confuse the CVB and the chamber. They don't understand the difference between the two. But the CVB is tourism development and tourism marketing, so that's the primary difference. Whereas they're going after everything from industry. Look at all of the LNG and the things that have happened across the river, and down Cameron Way.
Yeah.
So that is something that a lot of people had their hand in, from maritime to the chamber. And, it's an important thing that's happened for the area. We take everything that the visitor can do and see, and we market that. and then we all work together, which is what it takes to be able to promote.
Well, I mean, just you saying that, I mean, I'm thinking about all the different, just the cities that you have to work with and the leadership in each of those cities. I mean, and then beyond just that, the current leadership, you're talking about changing administrations many, many times. So you're bringing in new teams, and you've seen that cycle over and over again.
But there's so much change coming up. Politically, I think there's 6 or 7 new police jurors that'll be online, and the legislature's changing, and local politicians. It's that's the part I don't envy.
Right.
I like the fun stuff.
Yeah. I mean, this is probably a hard thing to answer, but in all these years, what do you consider the funnest thing that you got to do over and over again in your role?
I would say it would be the FAM tours and bringing people to town and showcasing the area and our food and everything that we have to offer. I think that's and then the second thing is we have a really great team at the CVB.
Oh, yeah.
And folks don't realize that we bring conventions to town. We bring sporting groups to town. We market the area. Well, how do we do that? We advertise in magazines, publications, social media, billboards.
Different languages.
Yep. Oh, yeah. 6 or 7 languages, in order to facilitate that international visitor. And then we handle 3,000 visitors a month at the visitor center in Lake Charles, and 1,100 or so at the facility in Sulphur.
Wow.
So they don't realize how many components there are at the CVB. And I would say there's something about everything that we do that I enjoyed. I loved working on marketing. I loved looking at new stuff and coming up with new marketing plans and new programming. I loved our visitor centers and what we could do for the visitor downstairs. At the CVB, it's a 2-story building, so I'll often look over and just watch and see how the visitor was being taken care of, and of course they were doing it in a wonderful way. So there was something about every single thing that we did, even accounting.
Right.
The accountability. So.
Yeah, that's something that I find that I think of often now, and I don't know that I always would have if I hadn't have had a relationship with you and your team and the CVB. When I do travel and I stop to use the restroom and have a cup of coffee and look through the brochures, it's in the past, a decade ago, I may have just stopped and went along my way and not thought any further. But when I do stop at one and I go to the counter and I have a question, I'm always looking around, because I said, behind this one little tiny 15-minute experience is a whole army of people potentially doing all the same things that are going on here in Southwest Louisiana with your team, with those folks. And
the ad might have brought them in.
Yeah.
The billboard might have brought them in, and then just help seal the deal, or the people downstairs telling them more about the things that they can see and do, or answering their questions on how to get here and how to get there. And certainly with the interstate issues that we have today, certainly how to get here and how to get there.
Right.
Which way to go.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, having somebody with a working knowledge, an intimate lay of the land,
Yes.
I love that. The tour map was always an eye-opening project for me. That's a funny project, because many years ago, probably 15 years ago, I had worked on that project when I was working for another agency. And I remember I did it for years, and I thought, man, I'm probably never going to see that thing again. And then when it came back through, believe it or not, I was like, just trajectory, I thought, I'm probably the right person to do this project, because I actually have an understanding of what it takes to make this thing work well. So now it's not that hard, but I tell you, every time I do that project, it opens my eyes. You really took it to a new level, though. It's a fun project now.
Yeah, you can. It's much, and I guess the layperson doesn't understand that. As part of what the CVB does, it's a resource.
Yeah.
And it's a resource for information. And what is more important, once you're here, is maybe you've got, an app on your phone, but a lot of people want that piece of paper that's a map.
Yeah, where is this at?
Yeah,
Let me see the
and
scope.
specifically to hotels, key tourism attractions, even hospitals, and some of the other key things in the area that a visitor might need while they're here. So it's important, I think, that I don't know when the day will come. I'm sure it will come. We won't have maps.
I'm gonna hate that day because Shelley, a lot of people don't know.
People want maps.
I'm a map collector.
Yeah.
Like, they laugh when I pull out my bag of maps. It's 2
Look,
feet
Rand
thick.
McNally's made a living out of it for a lot of people.
Oh yeah, I like to be able to lay it out and see the scope. And I've noticed even with apps, this happens a lot when you're zoomed in so close on an app, and it's like, oh, you find a restaurant you want to go to. If you don't have any scope, you don't really see how close you are to it. It could be, oh, well, that's right down the road, or not. I like to be able to see, like, how complicated is it to get to this location, not just how many minutes is it. I want to know where I'm at in that vicinity and just get a good snapshot.
And
or
they
even
provide them to the hotels, they provide them to the attractions, so that the visitor, wherever he goes, there's that tear-off map that he can find his way, even if he... it's kind of dangerous to be using your phone and reading apps while you're driving. Of course, you can say, I'm not the driver. Sounds like I've done that before. And... It is important, and so I think that it will be here for a while.
And I'm happy, I know it. I'm helped.
I hate to pause the program, but I want to ask you something. Did you know that you can help me and my team at Parker Brand Creative Services grow the Find the Good News signal? For less than a fancy cup of coffee, you can become an Early Risers Club patron on our Patreon page. What's Patreon? Well, it's a way for creators to fund their projects by pooling support from those really passionate people that believe in what they're doing. Do you believe in what we're doing with Find the Good News? I hope you do. We believe that there's already enough negative news in the world, even right here at home, and that good people doing good works deserve a platform to speak from too. That's why we created Find the Good News, and we believe in that simple mission. Maybe you believe in it too. If you do believe in finding and sharing good news, then head over to our Patreon page right now or check out the link in the show description. For a commitment of $3.33 a month, you can join the Early Risers Club of Find the Good News Patreon supporters and get access to the B-Sides, a patrons-only podcast with the crew behind Find the Good News, Parker Brand Creative Services. Each time we level up, the Patreon rewards will get bigger. If you're tired of old news, bad news, and fake news, help support Find the Good News at patreon.com/findthegoodnews. That's patreon.com/findthegoodnews. Now, back to the episode.
And I love you just as well.
I have a little travel habit that I make. I usually ask for something. When I go out of town, I usually ask for something like that, a walking map, or just, and most places will have one. And what I like to do is I make just little pencil marks or highlight markers of the places I've been, and I draw like my little walking path. If I ever pass away and my kids dig through my papers, they'll find little folded maps of places I've been, and just like
They'll find your treasure.
they'll see where I walked, And I just, something about that's kind of neat to me.
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't see everything, but this is the path that I took, So I think that kind of stuff's great,
I agree.
So in all these years, I know you've been, I guess, recognized a lot. I mean, a lot. But there's one thing that I haven't got to see yet that was a recognition that it's on my list of things to do. And there is an animatronic of you at the Mardi Gras Museum in Lake Charles. And that was a surprise, right?
She looks really good, too.
I haven't seen her yet.
I'm very proud of her. She's got very nicely coiffed red hair. Yeah.
What does that feel like?
It was a little daunting when I heard they were going to do it, but I knew that Ann Molizon and the Mardi Gras Museum Board do things really well, and they're constantly updating, and so I was very humbled by it. So yeah, it's kind of cool.
It is kind of cool.
Yeah.
I mean,
and it tells you to go to the CVB.
That's what I heard.
Done.
Is it actually your voice?
It is. They recorded me.
Did you know when you were recording it was for
Yes,
that?
I did.
Okay.
I did.
How neat is that? Because I mean, that Mardi Gras museum's got some really cool stuff in there, and it's going to be there a long time.
Beautiful things.
I mean, you're immortalized in there,
and it's one of the top attractions as well in terms of our museums where people want to go and see all of that. You know,
I'm
it's Mardi
always
Gras
blown
here,
away.
365 practically days of the year, except for the few days that they're closed.
To be quite honest, I mean, that's probably my favorite thing about Mardi Gras. I know that, and that's probably silly to other people. They like the parades and the balls, but for me, I actually just like to go in there and look at the art. I mean, to me, those costumes are just incredible art.
Yes, they are.
And the history, the way they've changed, and complexity, so much work, so much talent just in that one museum.
That's something we didn't have back in the day. Over 60 Mardi Gras crews.
Wow, what did Mardi Gras look like back in 1988?
Very small, and we worked very closely with Mardi Gras to bring it up to a larger scale.
Yeah.
Then it just bloomed and blossomed, and there were all of these folks starting Mardi Gras crews. And I want to say that Ann Mullazon was there to help people start their Mardi Gras crew and tell them how to do it and the best way to do it. And we worked to make some of the Mardi Gras, we didn't have a lot of events that the public could attend, and that's something we wanted to work with her and their group on. Then we had 12th night come around, and we had the Mardi Gras Gala come around, as those are opportunities to see all these costumes. For folks that might not be a member of a Mardi Gras crew, this is just the wonderful opportunity you have to, for a small fee, go and watch a parade of thousands and thousands of dollars that have been spent on these gorgeous costumes.
Yeah.
And so we were excited and there's even a couple of Mardi Gras crews that allow now the public to come to their presentations. Okay. They have to leave for their ball, but they can, come in for their presentations. I know Crew de la Famille does that. And there's a couple of others, I think. The Crew of Illusions does it. And does Cosmos do it?
I think Cosmos does too, yeah.
Yeah.
We got lucky last year. It was an interesting experience. We were hired to film a crew of Contraband. And so it was
that's an old
crew. Old crew.
Yeah.
We filmed, their kings toasting, the queens toasting.
The kings wear beards.
Yeah, it was old school in a lot of ways.
Old school.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that until later in the evening that gentleman that wasn't his beard. And then I saw them putting it back on, and I said, "Oh, that's he wears the same costume, I guess that's been passed down."
Or probably the cape.
Or the cape or something, yeah. It was interesting, though. I'd never experienced one from the ground floor, so to speak, and go to every single thing all the way through and to be looking at it in that way.
It's an investment for whoever is going to be on the court. It really is. You have to think about that, an investment of time and dollars, but it certainly is something I think that we have the second largest Mardi Gras in terms of crews next to New Orleans.
Really?
Yeah. We need a few more parades, and we could say there's some cities that have more parades than us.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. But in terms of Mardi Gras crews and festivities, I think other than parades, we're the second largest. Yeah.
Wow. Well, and I wonder how many people are opting to do those types of, come to cities like Lake Charles.
I think it's family friendly, and they are coming.
Yeah, I think so too, because, you can go experience Mardi Gras. New Orleans is a special type of Mardi Gras experience. I mean, it's not for everybody all together. I mean, you couldn't bring your family and experience that. I mean, that's just my opinion of it. But I mean, Lake Charles is definitely family friendly,
absolutely.
Yeah. And there's a lot for everybody to do.
And there's rules about that. The Mardi Gras of Southwest Louisiana has made sure that the parades are family friendly.
Yeah.
And as far as music and everything that happens on that float, you can be fined, and and so it's
really?
Oh yeah, they are very serious about making sure that they have the curb appeal.
Yeah.
So.
Well, isn't that something? I mean, I did not know that. So that's actually another testament to how awesome it is, because you can still pull off this really robust Mardi Gras with all the same variety of experiences that you would expect without having to cross a line.
And then you've got the really rural Mardi Gras in Iowa. Actually, it's the one where they chase the chicken
run.
The chicken run. There you go.
Yeah.
And they have had a lot of great publicity. I mean, the cover of Louisiana Life magazine and on to people.
About Mardi Gras, what surprised me recently is I have some algorithms that I set up through a particular reader to feed me tour and travel information. And every time Mardi Gras comes around, what I've been surprised by is how many places way outside of Louisiana are now making their own Mardi Gras.
Yep.
Even up in one of my favorite places to go is Grand Lake, Colorado, and they have a Mardi Gras there. And I was like, wow, what does this look like? Mardi Gras in California.
Yeah.
Mardi Gras in Texas. But what's cool, I think, is that they're calling it Mardi Gras, and it's like a parade and all that still, but it's got a little bit of the cultural flair of that community embedded into it. It's kind of neat.
There's a bunch of folks here that every Mardi Gras they go up to Colorado and they bring Mardi Gras there. Hal McMillan and a bunch of folks. Hal's Pals is what they call them.
Really?
And there's probably 40 or 50 of them that go up there and ski and bring beads and have a band.
Neat.
And we've always been working during Mardi Gras, so one of these days I'm going to go with Hal's Pals.
No
and see
joke.
what's going on up
now
there.
you can do that.
Yeah.
That's probably nice.
We've never seen snow that deep, so.
Man, I've never been skiing before, but I do love the mountains.
I won't be.
And the
If
snow.
I did anything, it would be, it wouldn't be skiing. It would be a snowmobile. But,
I definitely like the fresh air of the mountains. I'm not going to lie. It's one of my, definitely
too.
the coldness, the cool air.
That's why I liked San Francisco, because it was always cool and crisp.
Well, you got to travel a lot with this in these last 30 years.
I did.
Yeah. Would you think you'd had that opportunity without being connected to this organization? I mean,
I doubt that very seriously. I mean, travel, you cannot go after the visitor without going out of town to get them. So we were able to travel to different destinations to put forth a bid for conventions or for athletic events, or we were able to go and set up a trade show booth and market the area domestically and internationally. Most often, if we did anything internationally, it's in conjunction with the Louisiana Office of Tourism and the New Orleans CVB.
Okay.
Because it made it much more affordable, for us to partner. It's been a wonderful life that I have been able to have in my hometown where I grew up. I've been able to live here and love my job and love what I do, and certainly promoting and traveling was a big part of that.
Are you reading my mind? Because I was sitting over here thinking, I'm not kidding you. You're going to laugh, and I'm not making this up. I was sitting there going, I know what I'm going to ask you next. Well, how does love factor into these last 30 years of what you do? And you just used the word love twice.
Yeah. Another time that I really remember thinking this way, just something so simple, is I was driving to work one morning and I went underneath the I-10 bridge and I looked up and I saw the lake, shimmering in the morning. And gosh, I'm so lucky to live here. I love this place.
Yeah.
And most folks take a lot of things for granted. And, it took probably me moving away and having a postage stamp size yard and not being able to own my own home because the rent and the cost of living there was so high. And not having family, everybody was 3,000 miles away, to realize what I really wanted was what I had left behind. And so to be able to move home and then come back and sell my area to the world, I mean, I couldn't have asked for anything more than that. I've been very lucky and very humble to have had that job at the CVB for 31 years.
Yeah. You've left, you've changed And I know you've had people with you along the way.
Oh,
but,
absolutely.
But you really have a legacy. I mean, I wrote this down before you got here because I was trying to think of different things that just really stood out to me. And I will tell you a story to kind of illustrate this. And again, it gets into taking people for granted too. Like sometimes when you get in a working relationship with people, you're not always connected to them personally. You don't always get to have that opportunity. And I'm that way. I'm very intimate. I like to always dive off with people, and get close to them, especially when I'm working with them. And I always had regretted that I'd never really got to sit down in all those years and talk to you. And it hit me one day when I was out of town. Someone had called us to do some work out of town, and we don't get a lot of out of town work, but it was in kind of a travel historic kind of category. And the reason they called us because they had seen something we had done for you guys. And so I went and took the meeting, and I could get egotistical and go, oh, they're hiring us based on the merits of our own work. But the first thing they said in the meeting was, so I understand that you work with Shelley Johnson. And I was like, wow, they didn't say the Southwest Louisiana Convention of Visitors Bureau. They didn't say we love this work you did, which eventually they got into some version of that. But the very first thing was, you work with Shelley Johnson. And I go, yeah, we work with Shelley. I mean, I guess, yeah, we do. We work with Shelley. And they said, well, that just says a lot in itself. And then we moved on into the meeting. And I left and came back, and I told my wife, I said, the first thing they said was, you work with Shelley, that says a lot. And I was like, wow, dude, that's a lot of gravity for one person to have.
She was tough, wasn't she?
No. No, what I meant was that you carry...
No,
you know what I mean? There's like a legacy presence about you that surrounds you. And obviously people in other areas, it had never really... I guess I had an intellectual understanding of who you were and what you had accomplished, but it wasn't until it was like face to face and this person I'd never met before says your name next. It was your name, and that name meant a lot to them, and that was just a powerful thing.
Well, I think one of the wonderful aspects of working in the tourism industry is that even though we have our competitors statewide, regionally, nationally, you make a lot of friends. And when I did retire, I was the next to Baton Rouge, and I really won't count him because he worked in New Orleans and not as a CVB director before he went to Baton Rouge. I'll count him because he'd get mad if I didn't. But, I was really, at that time in my life, was the person with the most length of service. And Louisiana is very fortunate in the fact that we are legislated convention and visitor bureaus. We're not a political football that every time there's a new mayor or a new, administrator we don't change. We are very fortunate that if you do a good job and you are productive, then you can keep your job for a while. And so that's always, if you're not productive, you will not. But I had that length of service, and I have a lot of wonderful friends, and I was so surprised at how many of them came to the National Tourism Week luncheon, which was just out of this world this year, and it was my last hurrah. It was sort of recognized as my retirement, but those are friends for life, and that's the wonderful thing about the tourism industry is I have made friends for life. And still communicate with them, and probably will visit some in their homes, and because that's the kind of job it is. We have to sell hospitality, we have to be hospitable. At the same time, you've made all these wonderful friends doing it. And,
I love that. I love what you just said there. You have to sell hospitality. You have to be hospitable. I mean, sometimes we can try to fake it, but more authentic is whenever you really are. I'll share a little secret with you. I don't know if you even know this, but, that you're at that luncheon, they had contacted me many weeks before that and started sending me pictures for the slideshow.
Oh my goodness! Yes,
And
that
so-
slideshow was unbelievable.
So I made that here, and there were days. I mean, I didn't know all those people, but there were times that I would sit and edit that, and I would sit there and just get teary-eyed because I was like, I mean, I'm being honest. I would just sit there and go, "Wow!" I could feel the tears of love, really, swelling up in me, just seeing this hit your history with the convention.
It was so wonderful. Thank you so much.
Oh, I felt honestly honored to have been.
It just was such a wonderful thing to see. You know, kind of a pictorial history of my life.
Yeah.
I was wiping away the tears.
Oh, they did such a good job with the way they organized it. They picked all the songs, and they had a clear vision of what they wanted, and it was just nice to sit here. And my wife, you know, she watched it with me before we sent it off to him, and she was like, "Oh, there's going to be a lot of people." I mean, we're here crying over here, you know, and I'm going, okay, and we're not even the ones in these pictures, so what's it going to be like?
That staff at the CVB, really fortunate to have had a wonderful staff. Many of them have been there 10, 15, 20 years. Wow. And they do remarkable work. Mm-hmm. And now with Kyle Edmiston at the helm, I see it now. I see them just moving and grooving and cooking and booking and doing all sorts of fabulous things. Yeah. And that's just going to continue.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's a blessing. I mean, I
left it in good hands, and the people there are treasures that work at the Bureau. Many people don't realize the talent under that roof, under two roofs, actually.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's really been an honor, honestly.
Well, thank you.
To have gotten to work with you. Really?
For me too. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
We
I learned a lot.
We think highly of you.
I learned a lot working with you.
It's been you said something a minute ago that I thought, man, that's what I want. What you said, and I don't know exactly how you said it, but it's if you are productive, you know, then consistently, then you'll get an opportunity to keep your job. Mm-hmm. And that's something we've always wanted to be. I've never have been big on flash. I've always been big on, can we do this and make it happen and get it done reasonably well?
And constantly moving, and I mean, look at this today.
Just do something. Let's make something, bring something to life.
The good news.
Yeah, good news. That's right. Yeah, I mean, and that's partly another thing I wanted to get you in here, because I want people. I want them to understand the full scope of what the CVB is and what you mean to that, to the history of the Convention and Visitors Bureau.
I hope we've shared that today.
I think so.
Okay.
And I'm happy, I know it.
This episode's Fishing for Goodies Fishbowl sponsor is Brimstone Museum and Henning Cultural Center in Sulphur, Louisiana. I don't know what you look for when you travel, but one of the things I look for when I'm putting together my itinerary is a unique museum or gallery in the city I'm traveling to. I do this almost every time I go to a new city, but if I'm being honest, I'm guilty of not always doing that very thing right here at home in Sulphur, Louisiana. That's really a shame, because we have one of the most interesting, historically relevant, and culturally rich corners in any city in the country about 2 minutes from where I'm sitting right now. I'm talking about the Brimstone Museum and Henning Cultural Center. Have you ever really thought about why our city is named Sulphur? They've got a permanent exhibit on the history of the sulfur industry that answers that simple question and more. You really get a full scope of just how important the sulfur mining industry was to the development of Southwest Louisiana and the impact it had on the rest of the world. Yes, the rest of the world. On the same property, right next door to the museum, is the Henning Cultural Center, presenting some of the most interesting, modern, and culturally relevant local art shows I've ever seen. My dear friend Tom Trahan and the Brimstone Historical Society have really worked hard to give us this treasure, and it's a multifaceted jewel that I plan to take advantage of more often. You don't have to wonder what their hours are, or how to get there, or what shows are coming up. Just go to brimstonemuseum.org like I did, and subscribe to their mailing list right there on the homepage. That's brimstonemuseum.org. Tom will make sure you start getting the announcements for each and every new show at the gallery. But you don't have to wait for the mail to arrive to enjoy this historical local treasure. You don't have to be guilty, like me, of overlooking a local wonder that conveniently sits next to the Grove, one of the most beautiful walking parks in Southwest Louisiana. Drop in and say hi to Tom for me.
tour the museum and center, and make sure to tell Tom that you heard about Brimstone Museum on Find the Good News. Now, let's take that dive in the fishbowl. So if you listen to this show, then you kind of know that we have the fishbowl thing at the end. Do you know about that?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what we're going to do now.
Okay.
So so what you do is, this is the famous fishbowl. You draw 3 of whatever you want out of there. There's some big cards, small cards, little slips of paper. I do tell people what the difference is. The big cards are would you rather, so it's like would you rather bacon or would you rather ham or whatever. The small cards are like sort of just maybe thought ideas. And then the little slips of paper are actually submitted by listeners to the show. And that's, you can tactile pick your way through the bowl and pick what you want out of there.
Just read.
Just read it.
One?
Yep. Just read whichever one
Would
you want.
I rather give up meat or give up vegetables?
As somebody that loves Southwest Louisiana food, that's a tough call.
I like them both. I don't think I could be a vegetarian.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about the tours that we bring in. It's really hard to entertain vegetarians in Southwest Louisiana. Right. So I would say if I'm going to live here, I would say I would have to give up vegetables, although there goes my homegrown tomatoes.
Oh, man. But you know, I mean, yeah, I was sitting there, as you said that, I thought, okay, so here comes the guy with the crawfish carriage, and he pours them out on the table. And there's crawfish in there, but then there's corn and potatoes. If you got to give one or the other. But I guess crawfish, does that fall in the meat category?
I would say it falls in, because it's not a vegetable.
Yeah.
I don't believe
it's a creature. I used to be a vegetarian, and I didn't eat fish or any sea creatures during that time period. It was a long time ago, but my rule was if it has a face, I'll consider it off my, diet lineup.
My granddaughter decided to be a pescatarian.
Now, what's that?
Only eats fish.
Only eats fish.
And so
okay.
We were at a restaurant, and I said, okay, what kind of fish do you eat? And she says, the kind we had back home. She was about 10.
The kind we had back home, whatever that was.
We had back home. Okay, let's have a flatbread pizza then.
So a pescatarian, I have never heard of that. I'm going to look into that.
She's real smart, so it takes a lot to keep up with her.
Wow, pescatarian. Now,
it didn't last long.
I could probably do that. If I could have fish, if I had to make that choice, and it was just, okay, I can have fish, and I had to give up other meats, I could probably deal. I mean, I don't eat a lot of red meat anyway. But fish, I would have a hard time.
I would have a very hard time giving up seafood.
Yeah, I like fish.
All of it.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm asking you to think of your whole life now. Okay, in Southwest Louisiana, what meal that you've had stands out in your mind?
My mother was not Cajun.
Really?
My mother was the daughter of a rice farmer.
Really?
And so we had a lot of country.
Okay.
Kind of soul food,
Gotcha.
Roast rice and gravy.
Yeah.
I didn't have crawfish till I was an adult.
Yeah.
Now we had crabs. We went crabbing, and and we had shrimp.
Yeah.
But not gumbo.
Really?
It was always boiled.
Wow.
So
is that what you think of when you think of?
If I think of my go-to meal, and it's always Mama's cooking. I would have to say chicken and dumplings.
Really?
Yeah.
I like chicken and dumplings. Now, I haven't had
not the drop
homemade
kind.
ones.
They have to be rolled out and,
My dad said the same thing. He said the same thing.
Thin strips.
Ain't that something? I love chicken and dumplings, but it's hard at a restaurant to get them
you can't
really good.
I always have to ask too many questions if I see them on the menu. So,
Me too,
so
man.
that's probably not a good thing. But
I like
my sister
that.
can make them.
She can?
She's got my mom. She can make the recipe, so.
Isn't that funny? Because when people ask me like that last meal type question, I always go to things that my mama cooked too.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. My mom made the best meatloaf. Meatloaf, and she put olives in it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh, dude. That's meatloaf with some of her mashed potatoes and gravy. I could just... And
they weren't any flakes either. Those mashed potatoes weren't flakes.
That's right.
We had the real thing.
Man, that sounds good. Now I'm thinking about a roast and some rice and gravy. Man.
Mm-hmm.
See, I like these questions.
And that's one of the garden vegetables, or we, being that she wasn't, she grew up on a rice farm. We grew a lot of vegetables in the backyard.
Yeah.
So I'd always tell her save room for the merry-go-round because we'll have some play space, Mom.
Yeah. Not just
Tilling
farming.
up she was from Gillis, and so she would till up the whole backyard with her garden.
Makes me think of my grandmother when she was able. That was she lived in her garden, and so as a kid, I spent almost all of my childhood there. My parents working. And so, I was eating whatever she was growing. I mean, cucumbers, squash, tomatoes, satsumas, figs. It was always something coming out of the garden. And okra, green beans.
What do they say that 3 to 4 meals a week are from the land here?
Yeah.
I mean, if you buy shrimp or if you buy fish or crab or even vegetables. I mean, a lot of, especially during the season.
Isn't that something about living here too, that we you go somewhere else and you realize a lot of that is shipped in.
Yeah, I never knew that with farm to table. I mean, we had farm to table.
Yeah, that's a reality. Some places are having to bring that into their communities. That's literally how it is here, especially with seafood.
What is something you'd like to grow instead of buying?
Oh my gosh, what are the odds?
Well, I'm going to move away from things to eat. Trying to think of more about dieting. I would say flowers. I really love fresh flowers.
Do you? What's your favorite flower?
I love zinnias.
Yeah.
But I love anything seasonal. I mean, I pretty well have to have a couple of seasonal pots at the front door.
Yeah.
I just got mums this week for October and November, the fall. That always represents the fall to me. So I would say it would be flowers.
That's nice.
I don't like to go and buy a bunch of flowers. I'd rather buy a pot of flowers.
Yeah.
And
I'm the same way. I love
have them for a while.
I love things that grow. I love nature. I love plants. I'm not I don't have a green thumb. I've struggled. No. I'll tell you a funny story, just short funny story. Maybe it's not funny, it may be sad. We went to the Bumon Buddhist temple over in Port Arthur. They have their big garden festival, and so have you ever been there?
No.
It's really neat. I mean, it's a short drive. They do it every year, and you can go there, and it's a beautiful garden, and you can buy anything there. Anything that's growing, they'll sell you, and that's how they raise money for their temple. And so we bought some lotuses, and I was like, I've always wanted a water lily that we could have in the yard, and so the guy said, well, you need to dig a hole, and they kind of told me how to make a little tiny pond for it. So I was all excited. I had this big vision, I was going to have this little lotus pond in my yard. So I get home and I dig the hole, and it was a lot of work digging a hole. I hadn't dug a hole in a long time. So I dig the hole, I line it like they told me, and he said, and just every day put a little bit of those, the little balls, the little food you put in, throw it in the water with the mud, because it's really all you got to do, the mud and the water and that little bit of feed. And so they were growing and doing really well, and I was walking over there to put my little spoon of that feed in there, and I tripped, and I spilled like half of the bottle of that feed in there. And I mean, within a day, they just, how that you can burn your plants with that food? The water, I guess, just absorbed all that food, and all my beautiful lotuses just turned black and then crumbled. And I told Michelle, I said, it's funny because it's just the way it goes sometimes. I buy this lotus, these big dreams. Went over to this beautiful Buddhist temple, and I've got all these ideas about growing these things.
Can you order some online?
Well, I think I'm just going to drive back over there because I think you can go buy them anytime, but they just kind of have their big festival to promote it. But they have all kinds of neat things there. They make a whole day out of it. You get some Vietnamese cooking.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's neat. It's
I love
neat.
Vietnamese cooking.
Beautiful statues there. I mean, wonderful place. If you like flowers, lots of variety of flowers.
What month is it in?
It was in the summer, so I want to say it was at the front end of the summer, so May, probably June or July. It was hot, but it was pretty good day. Beautiful blue sky day. I would go back. I'm probably going to go every year, I think. We got a little tree. But that's something you might enjoy.
Ways to solve a professional problem you're currently facing.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's interesting for someone that is retired.
Yeah. Well, I am doing some volunteer work relative to tourism right now. So I think it's not all about the money. It's about helping people. So one of the ways that I'm continuing to work is through volunteering,
Really?
and for a while.
Yeah.
Until I can get out there a little bit more and face the grindstone again.
Yeah.
I don't want to work, full time.
Sure.
It's kind of funny. I always said, I was always envious of teachers because they work very hard, but they did get the summer off.
Sure.
And so one of the things in the hospitality industry, you tend to work a lot of hours.
Right.
And I don't think I took, in the 31 years, 2 weeks off at a time.
Yeah.
Except for maybe a couple of times, just because there was always something going on. So I took the summer off. I haven't done a whole lot. I worked around the house and did a little bit of traveling here and there, mainly in state.
Yeah.
So I think the way to solve my professional problem of getting back out there is to figure out when the right time is going to be for that.
Yeah.
And enjoy life as it is for right now.
Well, what's it feel like? I mean, I'm curious about this because this is I talk about this all the time, which is the unnatural rhythm of the professional world. It's you just said it. I mean, when other people are off, that's when you're on.
Yeah.
Right, especially in hospitality. I'm sure when other people are off, you're working or trying to get to that point. That's a strange pace to work at, and when you're in that for 30 plus years, and then you've had this time off, how much time does it take for that clock in you to reset?
It's been very different. It really, really has. In the very beginning, I think I felt a little depressed,
I can see that.
About that, and saying, well, what am I going to do today? And, what is there that I have to, I'm very task driven. So,
right.
So my list, what is going to be on my list today?
Right.
And so it's taken a little bit to finally get back into the groove of saying it's okay not to do a whole lot, and think of one good thing you want to accomplish today.
Do it well and sink yourself in. That's something that I wish dearly I could figure out how to do and still function and in the way that we have to function. I do wish that, or you could just sink in and go, let me do this thing really well and with total mindfulness and awareness. It's hard to do that.
It's hard to do that when you're working and multitasking.
Yeah.
That's what's gone, is that multitask. I mean, I can certainly have a lot of multitasks around the house, but I've never been very domestic. So I've enjoyed reading. I've done, for the first time ever, some binge television watching.
Oh, wow.
And
can I ask you what you've been binging?
Well, I have been binging on Bosch.
Oh, yeah. That's on Amazon or something, right?
Yeah, I had never seen anything, any of that. And I just totally got into it. And Longmire.
Yeah. It's been out a while, too. There's a lot of that to watch.
Yeah, I watched it for a while when it was on television, and then it went away. And so I've done a little bit of that, and I've enjoyed that when I have the time to do that.
It's nice.
Yeah.
I'm happy for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It reminds me of something my mom and I were talking about, because I told you, about her knee and her leg. And so she stays at home a lot. And I went over there one Sunday, and it was just she and I talking. It was so quiet. And I sat there for a little while, and where she's at, I saw the light kind of moving across the floor as we'd talk and through the blinds. And I told her, I said, God, how nice it must be to just watch the light move across the floor. And I was sitting there looking at it like, what a treasure. And then she said, she goes, you get sick of the light moving across the floor. So it just shows you we need a little healthy dose of both, And so when you said that little light depression sets in, I know what you mean, because when I get when I get time off, that first day, it's hard for me to get out of that what's next mode, what's on my task list mode, who do I have to talk to today, and what needs to get done before 5, all that. It's nice when it does start to get its fingers out of you a little bit, though.
Yeah. That's why I think the volunteerism is helping a lot. Little projects.
Yeah, for sure. And you're helping people.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. Giving back to each other. I love that. There is a couple more things on this
Okay.
show. The last thing is that box sitting right next to you. Something new we added here about 5 or 6 episodes ago called Better You in a Box. And so what these are is just like challenges we can make to ourselves. But what I've had, or to the listeners, and I've asked each guest to just draw one and read it. And listeners, if you're listening, you know what this is all about. There's a challenge to me and to you to possibly take in our life, something to shake us out of our normal routine.
Sign up to sponsor a child.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now we do that already. We do. There's something called Compassion International. Have you heard of that? So Compassion International, what they do is you sponsor a child in another country, and it's basically you provide education money to a school so they can get like a regular education, get reading, writing, books. But over the years, you follow that child from 5 years old all the way through high school. And you get to they send letters back and forth with you, pictures.
Oh.
And you can, what happened with our child that we had picked, he ended up being the same age as our son.
Uh-huh.
And their birthdays are almost identical. And then when he sends us like little letters of things he likes, it comes through a translator. If you don't read their language, a translator will translate it for you. And come to find out, they have a lot of the same hobbies and interests. So on his birthday and the holidays, we can, give him extra things and say, hey, we'd like for him to have these items, because our little boy likes the same stuff. So it's kind of neat to have.
That really is neat.
Yeah, it is neat. We found it through Lake Charles. They had set up these in the parking lot at over on Oak Park, and they set these trailers up. And so what you would do is that they had set it up like you could walk through another country, and you chose which country you want to walk through, and you kind of see what a child's life is like in those countries, what their living quarters are like. And
Wow.
And it really was touched us so much, like, we should do this.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, I think it's a good program. I mean, they have all their stats and everything. You can go see how much of the money goes where. So I liked it. I felt like a large proportion of what we were putting in. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
I think anybody listening, I mean, I advocate that particular program pretty heavily because they've done a good job of communicating.
I chose my card by color.
Did you? Mm-hmm. What color is it?
It's kind of a cornflower blue.
Yeah, it'd be a pretty flower. Mm-hmm. There's one last question.
Okay.
It's on the back of that coffee mug. Then that's that yellow coffee mug right there.
Oh, did anything good happen today? Well, I got to come here and talk to you.
That was good.
Yeah.
I was looking forward to this conversation.
Me too.
I have been for a while.
Well, thank you. We'd talked about it, and it kind of got pushed back for me for a little bit. I was very happy to finally get it on the calendar.
Yeah. Yeah, no.
I'm happy to have a calendar, by the way, and put things on it.
Well, you've been putting things on calendars for a long time.
I'm a calendar girl.
That's right. And everything that we all do. I mean, look, I go to these events and not just working with the CVB, but also going to the events. I mean, those calendars that we all live by, a lot of that is built on a foundation that you're a part of for a long time.
I still look at the festival calendar.
Yeah.
To see what I might want to do this weekend or next month, or if I have company coming in. And
yeah. Well, it's been an honor to have worked with you. It's been an honor to have you sit here and take the time to do this.
It's been an honor to work with you as well. I've learned a lot from you.
We've learned a lot.
Absolutely have learned a lot from you. I'm serious.
We think about you all the time.
Well, this has been fun. It's been fun just chatting, and you've made me feel like, a good old friend.
And I love you just as well.
Thanks for listening to my conversation with Ted and Jody of Halos. If you found value in this conversation, consider supporting Find the Good News at patreon.com/findthegoodnews. Share this episode on social media or leave an honest and kind review. That's how we take the signal back and make media positive again. I appreciate all of your support, but most of all, I thank you for pressing play.